All right, our update for August 1st will review the DHCD lawsuit, which has been dismissed, but the story's not over yet because we will be filing a motion for reconsideration and an appeal. So, what's the big deal? Many of you may not yet know Mass Landlords is in litigation against the Department of Housing and Community Development related to pandemic rental assistance. The department got $1 billion, round numbers, of rental assistance. Not all of that was to be paid out to renters and landlords, but most of it was. Some of it was for administration, and the regional administering agencies, the agents of the department, received 151,000 applications for help through January 2022. The data is a little bit out of date, but that's where the litigation really got going. So that's the data point we'll stick with. 151,000 applications. A lot of households in Massachusetts needed help. The state approved 61,142 as of that date for a total expenditure of $460 million. That's a fantastic achievement. Our rental assistance safety net never did so well. However, 90,000 applications were not approved. And when we look into this and we say, well, how many of these were fraudulent or people who were not eligible? We think at most 15% were denied for cause. And that's not our estimate. That's we as in the state, as in people on Zooms telling us how likely fraud is in these different scenarios. It's not many. That means 75,000 households who asked for help during the pandemic did not get it and failed to get it for a bogus reason. And to make matters worse, when we asked the state to go in and look at these applications, they couldn't find 47,000 of them. They're lost to supervision among the regional administering agencies in banker boxes, printed out, or received on paper in the first place, but either way, not digitally accessible. The state has said that it will take 40 people working for a month to find these records, and it'll cost $200,000 in mailing costs to notify people about it. And they say they can't afford it. But at the same time, they're spending $800,000 to litigate fraud, which, as I've just demonstrated, is a much smaller percentage of the total applications received, 10% versus maybe 30% that have gone missing. Mass Landlords had a hearing on this June 15th. These are a public record and subject to the public records law, but the state is saying, partly because they don't want to do the work, that there's privacy concerns involved here. Now, note, Mass Landlords is not asking for the name of a single applicant. We're only asking for the address of housing provider service that was supposed to be rendered. So not knowing who lives there anymore, especially if they were evicted, we can't match that up to renter names. But despite our very limited request, the judge dismissed our case. This just happened. All right, so what does this mean exactly? I can show you the motion to dismiss Mass Landlords versus Department of Housing and Community Development, and it says a complaint is hereby dismissed. This doesn't end it, but I'll just show you briefly what the judge has said here. The judge has said a whole bunch of stuff supporting the state's contention that privacy is at stake here, and there may be some privacy concerns for some folks, but the main thing is privacy has to be balanced against public interest, and the judge completely dismissed Mass Landlords' public interest claims. She wrote, Mass Landlords has not described how, once it matches an address provided by the department to a name involved in a summary process action, we're trying to compare. I asked for rental assistance, I didn't get it, and therefore got evicted. We're trying to find instances of that. Mass Landlords hasn't said how they can determine that the persons involved belong to one of the suspected groups without accessing some other type of private data. The judge doesn't understand how statistics works, and we can show, for instance, that City Life Vida Urbana, which is an organization with whom we don't share many political objectives, they have published a report with valid statistical methodology, and they can look at zip codes and census tracts that are a lot of Black immigrant people of color neighborhoods, and they can determine correctly, rightly, this conclusion is valid, that evictions are disproportionately harming people of color in Massachusetts. So the judge is clearly not familiar with that line of reasoning and thinks we have to somehow know the race of each person who asked for help to determine that the state had a problem. So that's wrong. And then also, The judge wrote, mass landlord's suspicion arises not from any affirmative facts by the department, but rather from what mass landlords perceives is an alleged lack of procedures in place to assist these groups. Because we asked the state, hey, can you show us that you're going out of your way to help people who are English as a second language, who have a disability, who can't use the computer? Show us that you're working hard to get everybody included in the pandemic response. And the judge, again, doesn't understand the affirmative fair housing rules. I'll pull up a slide from the department itself. This is a DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development slide. And they talk about how they have an affirmative obligation to analyze and modify rules, policies, and practices that have potential discriminatory effects and disparate impact. So lack of a procedure is prima facie evidence of unlawful disparate impact. So we're going to file a motion for reconsideration and inform the judge about these new trends in data analysis and disparate impact. And of course, we can appeal, and separately, we can file an MCID complaint to start that, because there's enough going on here to say, well, we can identify the disparate impact already. So even though the judge did dismiss our case, it's not over by a long shot, and we will keep you updated.